Some celebrities vanish from Hollywood because of scandal. Others fade away after a slow, painful collapse that never quite ends. Nancy McKeon fits into neither story. She walked away from the industry while she was still standing at its very peak. No controversy, no crisis, no tabloid explanation to point to. And that, more than anything else, is exactly what kept people talking about her for decades afterward. She had been one of the most familiar faces on American television, someone millions of viewers had practically grown up with, and then, at the height of that fame, she simply chose to step back from the noise. For years afterward, whatever happened to Nancy McKeon became a kind of shared nostalgia for anyone who remembered watching The Facts of Life. What the public got in return was a scattering of interviews, the occasional magazine mention, and long stretches of silence. But here's the thing. That silence did more to fuel public curiosity than any press tour ever could have. Now here's what almost nobody knows. As Nancy McKeon nears her 61st birthday, the full picture of what actually happened has finally come into focus. And it's not the story most people assumed. This isn't a tale of an actress fading away. It's a story of someone choosing her own path on her own terms. To understand how she got there, we have to go. But fate, or maybe just one door quietly closing so another could open, steered her in a completely different direction just a year later, in 1995. It happened somewhere far from glamorous, on the set of a Hallmark TV movie called A Mother's Gift. There, Nancy met Mark Andrews, a Texas-born camera and cinematography technician. Mark wasn't the kind of person anyone would recognize or search for online. He had no fame, no interest in the spotlight, no career in front of a camera at all. And for a woman who had spent her entire childhood and early adulthood under public scrutiny, it was likely that exact quality, Mark's steady, low-key presence, that let her feel like herself again for the first time. Looking back, that 2018 run on Dancing with the Stars reads almost like an emotional dress rehearsal, a chance to leave her comfort zone behind and show up for the public in a completely new way, not hidden behind a script or a character, but simply as herself. But just a year later, Nancy McKeon's life would take a turn far darker than anyone could have anticipated. Not because of a career decision this time, but because of a series of losses more profound than anything she'd ever had to face. Some years don't define a life through what's gained, but through what's taken away, losses so heavy that no amount of bracing for them could ever be enough. For Nancy McKeon, 2019 was that kind of year. It started in October when her father, Donald McKeon, passed away. This was the man who had first introduced Nancy and her brother to show business when they were still children, who had sat with them through their earliest auditions, and who had lived to watch his daughter become one of the most beloved faces on American television. Losing a parent is a blow nobody is ever truly ready for, no matter how much they know it's coming. But for Nancy, it was only the start of what would become the most devastating autumn and winter of her life. Just 2 months later, on December 10th, 2019, tragedy struck again. Philip McKeon, her only brother, her partner since childhood, the boy she'd once modeled Sears catalog ads alongside, died at 55. After a long illness the family kept almost entirely private. He was the person who'd grown up beside her in casting rooms and later stood behind the camera directing episodes she starred in. Family spokesperson Jeff Ballard confirmed the news on what was described as a somber Tuesday morning, saying the family was beyond devastated and heartbroken over Phil's death, and that his humor, warmth, and loyalty would be remembered by everyone who knew him. Just take that in for a second, losing her father and then, barely 2 months later, losing the one person who'd been by her side her entire life. These weren't two separate tragedies. They were waves crashing one right after the other, with no real time to catch her breath between them. There's one small, quietly devastating detail that makes it all hit even harder. Just a month before Philip died, on his birthday, November 11th, Nancy had posted an old photo of the two of them on Instagram with a caption that read something like, "It's been a rough stretch lately, but like we always say, we'll get through it together, love you, dude." 1 month later, the brother she'd written those words to was gone. And here's the part almost nobody talks about, because in the middle of all that grief, Nancy did something that says more about her character than almost anything else in this story. While her family was reeling from these losses, she was still in the middle of filming a Lifetime holiday movie, You Light Up My Christmas, reuniting with former Facts of Life castmates. Kim Fields, who was both starring in and producing the project, later revealed that Nancy had been dealing with an unimaginably difficult family situation during filming, difficult enough that some of her scenes had to be shot remotely. And yet, even in the middle of the worst grief of her life, she refused to walk away from her commitment. She simply said she was still going to do it. It's a small detail, easy to miss, but it says something essential about who she is. No matter how much pain she was carrying privately, she chose to keep her word rather than let her grief undo a commitment she'd made to other people. And true to the way she'd lived her whole life, privacy over public display, Nancy didn't go on talk shows to process her grief out loud. She didn't sit for long, emotional interviews. She didn't turn her family's loss into content. Instead, she chose something quieter and far more personal: short posts on social media, paired with old, faded photographs, including one of her father playing catch with a young Philip. A photo of the two siblings standing together in front of a camera in their early years, echoing the very beginning of their careers together. No long captions, no dramatic displays of emotion, just love, expressed in the simplest way she knew how, simple enough that anyone scrolling past could still feel the weight sitting underneath every short sentence. What makes this even more moving is that it didn't stop in 2019. Every November since, on Philip's birthday, Nancy has kept posting old photos of him, always paired with the same hashtag that's become a quiet, personal ritual. A short phrase repeated year after year that somehow says more about enduring love than any lengthy tribute ever could. Even as recently as late 2024, when Linda Lavin, the actress who played Philip's mother on Alice, a show he spent nearly a decade of his childhood on, passed away, Nancy immediately reposted old photos of the two of them together and wrote a heartfelt goodbye, telling Linda to rest easy and to look after each other up there. It was a small moment that revealed something bigger. The grief of losing her brother had never actually gone away. It had just settled beneath the surface, quietly waiting for moments like this one to resurface and remind her of a piece of her life nothing could ever replace. So Nancy McKeon's resilience isn't the kind you see in dramatic declarations or tearful television interviews. It's found in smaller places, in the fact that she kept her professional word even while grieving, in choosing to mourn privately on her own terms without needing sympathy from strangers. In the quiet, consistent way she's kept her father and brother's memory alive year after year. An old photo, a familiar hashtag, a short message on the days when missing them hurts the most. But here's where the story takes its most unexpected turn yet, because in January 2025, at 58 years old, Nancy McKeon did something she had never done in her entire 6-decade career. She stepped onto an off-Broadway stage in New York for the very first time. For someone who'd been working in entertainment since the age of 2 and had appeared in hundreds of TV episodes, it was a genuinely remarkable milestone, a stage debut in the very city where her artistic dreams first took shape, decades later than anyone might have expected. The play was Pen Pals, written by Michael Griffo, staged at Theater at St. Clement's. Nancy took on the role of Bernie, opposite actress Johanna Day as Mags, in a story built around a 50-year friendship between two women who never once meet face to face. A bond kept alive entirely through handwritten letters, from their teenage years all the way into middle age. There's something quietly poetic about that, A play built around the value of long distance, enduring connection became the very production that brought Nancy back to the stage, just a few years after losing the brother who'd been beside her since the very start of her life. Bernie and Mags never need to be in the same room to understand each other. They just need to stay connected, to hold on to their shared memory. It's hard to imagine anyone who understands that theme more deeply than a woman who spent years keeping her brother's memory alive through old photographs, one birthday at a time. Nancy has said that being part of the theater world, even in this small way, something she dreamed of since her childhood in Forest Hills, Queens, felt like a dream finally coming true, even if it took 50 years to get there. The run was received so well that it was extended, returning for another stretch in August 2025 at the Dr. II Theater, with Nancy reprising the role of Bernie, this time alongside Gail Winnar. Now, closing in on 61, she keeps working, but exactly the way she decided to, years ago. Selectively, deliberately, without chasing every opportunity or grabbing for attention. Returning to the work only when it genuinely calls to her, and only when the timing feels right. There's one image that feels like the right way to close this story. A woman nearing 60, standing on a small stage in the middle of New York City, reading aloud the letters of a character who has never once met her closest friend in person, yet loves her fully anyway, sustained by nothing but pages passed back and forth across decades. Nancy McKeon doesn't need to act to understand that feeling. She's lived a version of it herself, in the way she still honors her brother every year, on his birthday, with a small hashtag whose full meaning probably only she really knows. Maybe what makes Nancy McKeon so remarkable isn't that she once played Joe Polniaczek, or that she was one of the most recognizable faces in America. Maybe it's simply how she treated that fame, not as something she had to protect at all costs, but as a tool for building the life she actually wanted. She stepped away when it felt like time to step away. She came back when she felt ready to come back. No formula behind it, no publicity calculation, no fear of fading from memory. Just a woman listening to herself through every chapter of her life, and having the nerve to actually follow what she heard. Now, at nearly 61, while plenty of people are still clinging to some version of youth or relevance, Nancy McKeon is spending her time reading letters aloud on a small stage, because that's what makes her feel truly alive. And maybe that's the most extraordinary thing about her. Not her face, not her career highlights, just the rare kind of peace that comes from understanding early on that her life never needed anyone else's approval to matter. Nancy McKeon's story is a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do isn't holding on to the spotlight. It's knowing exactly when to walk away from it, and choosing to build a life that actually belongs to them. So what's your take on her choice? An admirable exit from fame, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow for more stories about the Hollywood stars of yesterday who are now living life completely on their own terms.